Indonesia kerap menjadi negara transit bagi pencari suaka yang mencari perlindungan ke negara lain. Dengan jumlah yang kian membludak, Badan Urusan Pengungsi PBB di Jakarta pun kewalahan. Tahun ini saja ada 12.000 pencari suaka, terutama dari Afghanistan dan Myanmar, yang telah mendaftar di kantor UNHCR Jakarta. 70% diantaranya mendapat status sebagai pengungsi. Pekan lalu, Asia Calling bertemu dengan keluarga pengungsi Rohingya asal Burma yang saat ini berlindung di kantor LBH Jakarta. Keluarga ini terdiri dari 18 orang. Rebecca Henschke berbincang dengan Manuel Jordao, perwakilan UNHCR di Jakarta soal ini.
We know the family. The family came here, they were registered and they are waiting for interview. It's first come, first served. So they will have to wait for their time. We will not discriminate others that will be equally also with the same sort of problems or the same sort of families, same sort of composition of families. So it's what it is. If we could do it earlier, we would have done it earlier. But it's because...
And you can't do it earlier because?
Because we have other people that are first.
And the staffing is not keeping up with the numbers?
Well, there is a waiting time, as I say, there is a waiting list and not everybody can be assessed at the same time.
The question a lot of viewers were asking when they saw this is, why is a family living at the legal aid centre? Is there no other alternative for asylum seekers? Why would they be living in an office block? What are their alternatives?
The reception alternatives in Indonesia are limited because the state has not taken that responsibility, which will be a responsibility associated exactly to the eventual or to the day Indonesia will decide to ratify the refugee instruments and the convention.
So basically you're on your own in Jakarta till you're registered as a refugee.
Very
Once you
much.
are registered as a refugee.
Very much. The resources available to UNHCR allow us in a limited fashion to meet the basic needs of only those cases that come to our door and that we consider to be vulnerable cases, like women with babies and children, unaccompanied minors. Those are the exceptions to the rule of asylum seekers that get immediately some assistance to meet their basic needs, but not the other
Numbers
ones.
are they, say, from 12,000, sorry. What sort of, how many people are getting assistance from UNHCR out of that 12,000?
The program is very limited. The number of people being assisted by UNHCR in this moment, it's around 300 refugees with some vulnerable cases. We have about 100 minors that are being assisted in 2 centers, and most of the other cases are being assisted by the International Organization for Migration, IOM.
How long is the average process that it takes? Say I arrived as an asylum seeker today at your office. What would be my time frame for receiving an interview with UNHCR to determine whether I was a refugee or not?
So if you had come to visit me today and asking my office to register you as an asylum seeker, you would be registered today. In principle, we don't have a waiting time for registration.
In practice?
In practice, we don't. In principle, registration it's happening in actual time.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it will take longer for you to get the first interview. Probably you'll have to wait to 2 to 3 months because there is a queue of people that came before you waiting for being interviewed. We have about 13 or 14 colleagues that do the interviews and the assessment of your story to check if your story is indeed credible or not.
What is used to determine that whether that story is credible or not?
Well, that's a 1 year of training that you'll be invited to participate, how to use the convention and how to go about the definition. You have to show that the reasons why you believe you should not be returned home or sent back home are as serious as justifying clearly that your life or freedom are in danger. So you have
What percentage of the asylum seekers that come here are determined not credible refugees?
I would say close, in the overall caseload, as 50% of the claims are Afghan asylum seekers. I think we will have above 70%.
So it's very high.
It is. It is because I would say most of the asylum seekers coming to Indonesia are Afghans, and the second caseload when it comes to refugee recognition, it's Myanmarese.
Right. So you're saying within 2 months I would have an interview that would determine whether I was a refugee or not, of arriving in Jakarta?
You would have a first interview within 2 months. It would take us to go back to you probably another 6 months, with a 12 to 16 months maximum for you to have a final decision. So 1.5 years at this stage. Not ideal, but that's what we can do in this moment.
1.5 years. And then once I was determined as a refugee, I understand there's 3 options: voluntary repatriation, which would be out of the question if I came from Afghanistan, I was a real refugee. Local integration is pretty much out of the question. And so you have a third one, resettlement to one of the 21 countries. How long does that process take?
It varies enormously from one resettlement country to another.
Say I wanted to go to Australia.
It will never take less than 1 year. From the day this office submits your case to a resettlement country authorities. It's important to note that resettlement is not an international obligation imposed on resettlement countries. Resettlement, it's a goodwill program.
Or say last year 6,000. What percentage of those actually get resettled?
The resettlement capacity that we have these days, it's around 1,000 submissions per year. 1,000. We cannot, with the current capacity of UNHCR in Jakarta, it's 1,000 submissions per year. We would not be able to produce more submissions.
So it's a tiny amount of the amount of people.
The resettlement would never be able to cope with the number of asylum seekers and refugees that are coming into the region and into Indonesia.
So in the end, people are just staying here because they can't be resettled. So in the end, you've got your huge numbers of people.
The tendency, it's for the number of those staying in Indonesia without a solution, those numbers are growing by the day.
And they're growing much more than the number that are being resettled?
Absolutely. Resettlement,
by 6 times.
Resettlement, it's a solution that cannot cover the needs of all the refugees that end up being recognized in Indonesia.
So then the problem then falls to Indonesia, doesn't it?
Or to the region, as we say, because all these movements of people coming from different countries of origin and transiting in different countries require, given the sheer amount and the number of people that are coming, the trend it's so important that it requires countries to discuss how to tackle this in a more regional collective fashion. If no regional agreement is found, the tendency is for a country to pass and shift the problem from that has at home to the neighboring country. We have been saying that this will create instability in the region and create additional political problems that countries want to avoid.
Laporan tersebut sekaligus menutup perjumpaan kita dalam Asia Calling. Terima kasih untuk perhatian Anda. Kunjungi portal kbr.com/asiacalling untuk cerita-cerita lain dari seputar Asia. Saya Kak Agustin, sampai jumpa di edisi berikutnya. Asia Calling, your window on Asia.